Over the past 3 months or so, I've been quietly but consistently focused on a pretty aggressive cut. And so far, I've lost 27 pounds. Here's the before and here's the after. In addition to being very consistent with training and nutrition, I also use this as an opportunity to test 5 of the most popular peptides out there and see how they supported my goal of losing body fat. And in this video, I'm going to walk through each peptide in the stack, what each one does, how I dosed them, what I noticed, and some of the side effects that weren't so great about each one. Now, I ran this exact stack for 90 days. I tracked my weight, stayed consistent with nutrition, lifted at least 4 days a week, and made sure not to stumble on the foundations needed to see these results. These peptides were just icing on the cake for the work I was already putting in. Something I want to be very clear about before going any further. Yes, they are going to make the process easier, but they are not a replacement for hard work. Now, if you don't know anything about me, my name is Josh Holyfield, and I've worked with a lot of guys over the years to help them lose weight, get in shape, and do it in a sustainable, healthy way. More recently, peptides have become part of the conversation, and so of course they've been getting added to some of these protocols. And what I've found about my clients is the ones who do well would see success with or without peptides. They already have their consistency and discipline built in. The ones who struggle are usually looking for shortcuts when their foundations aren't dialed in. Now, before we go any further, I just want to clarify that this is not medical advice. I absolutely always recommend talking to a licensed physician before taking anything like this, especially if you have a history of cancer. Some of these peptides are not something you should mess with if you have that risk. And keep in mind that most of them are research chemicals, so you're doing this at your own risk. All right, that's the disclaimer. Now, let's break down what I actually used. The very first peptide, and probably the most powerful one in the stack, was Retatrutide. Retatrutide is known as a triple agonist, and it's like the next level of semaglutide or tirzepatide. And it targets GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon receptors. During the phase 2 trials, people lost about 24% of their body weight on average, which is significantly higher than the results from Ozempic or Mounjaro. And here's how it works. GLP-1 suppresses appetite and slows how fast your stomach empties. This helps with hunger control. GIP supports insulin response and nutrient use. This improves insulin sensitivity and nutrient partitioning, which basically helps the body decide whether or not to store the nutrients that you consume. And glucagon is what tells your liver to burn fat and increases the number of calories you burn at rest. So when all 3 of these pathways work together, you get a very, very strong fat burning and metabolic response. Now, I started with Retatrutide at 2 milligrams per week. Then I kind of titrated up every 4 to 5 weeks by 2 milligrams until I got to 6 milligrams per week. And since reaching 6 milligrams per week, I've kind of stayed there because I've seen really great results and haven't really seen a reason to increase. I do 1 shot per week, no split dosing, and it seems to work really well for me. Now, one disclaimer, when you start Retatrutide, the appetite suppression is going to be very strong. I personally found myself skipping meals without even realizing. So if you try it, make sure you stay focused on hitting your protein goals. Because if you don't, you'll lose muscle, which can become a long-term problem for you. But after a few weeks, my body adjusted, and I was able to maintain around 2,500 calories a day comfortably. My sleep improved, and my blood pressure dropped noticeably, which was a major bonus for me. One thing to also note is that some people do get mild skin sensitivity, usually a sign of dosing too high or being more responsive to the compound than others, but it's not really painful, it's just noticeably annoying. And then some of the other common side effects early on are related to gastric issues like constipation or diarrhea, but they usually level out after a few doses. Retatrutide was absolutely the foundation of the stack, and everything else I added was designed to support the goal of fat loss. And so the next 2 peptides in that list were BPC-157 and TB-500. This combination you may know as the Wolverine stack. You can buy these as a blend, which makes dosing easier, or you can buy them separately, which gives you a little bit more control on dosing and frequency of injections of each compound. BPC-157 helps the body repair damaged tissue by improving how repair cells move and connect. And it increases blood flow to injured areas by helping new blood vessels form through angiogenesis, bringing oxygen and nutrients that speed up healing. TB-500 works throughout the whole body. It helps repair cells reach damaged areas, keeps tissues flexible, reduces scar tissue buildup, supports blood vessel growth, and helps control inflammation so tissues can recover properly. And when these two peptides are used together, they support recovery from hard training or injury, and they help repair tissue faster, ease inflammation, and keep joints and muscles moving well under heavy strain. And that makes recovery much smoother, and it lowers the risk of overuse injuries when you're training hard or in an extreme calorie deficit like I was. Now, I personally took 250 micrograms of each of these compounds per day for the full 90 days. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, I noticed a major improvement in my own recovery. Soreness faded faster, and my usual tendon pain in my elbows was completely gone. Adding these to the stack was definitely a game changer for staying healthy and keeping performance up through this whole cut. And the great thing about BPC-157 and TB-500 is they don't have any real side effects that are known, so it's not something I really have to worry about. Okay, so moving into the fourth peptide. MOTS-C is a small peptide made in the mitochondria that helps your body use energy more efficiently. It improves how muscles and other tissues switch between burning carbs and burning fat. It also supports insulin sensitivity and keeps the mitochondria functioning smoothly. This helps stabilize energy levels, improves your endurance, and makes training feel much more productive even while you're in a calorie deficit. MOTS-C works by activating pathways that improve how cells sense and use fuel. So basically, it helps move glucose into muscles, increases the oxidation of fat, and reduces the buildup of fatigue. And when you start taking MOTS-C, you'll definitely notice steadier energy, faster recovery, and much better performance during training. And because it supports efficient energy use, it can make fat loss phases feel easier and make training much more sustainable and comfortable for you, to say the least. Now, this is my first time ever taking MOTS-C, and what I can say is I definitely notice the difference in my performance on the days that I take it versus the days that I don't. And for this stack, I actually split 10 milligrams per week into 3 doses and took those 30 minutes before training. My goal was to make sure that I was dosing it on days that I knew my training was going to be much more intense, like my leg days. And like I said, I definitely noticed better energy and endurance from this one. Okay, now moving into the last compound that I ran, which was human growth hormone, or HGH. Now, technically HGH is not a peptide, but it's kind of in that same category, and it played a huge role in my results, so it's absolutely worth including. Now, what HGH does is it's directly raising your IGF-1 levels. And IGF-1 is actually what's responsible for helping support fat mobilization, muscle retention, and recovery. Now, the cool thing about HGH is it's also going to improve sleep quality and help the body repair tissue much more efficiently. And during a cut, one of the biggest challenges is keeping muscle while losing all that fat. HGH supports this by helping your body improve nutrient use so that more of what you eat supports muscle and less gets stored as fat. And then when you're in a deficit, it actually serves to preserve the muscle you have. Now, if you don't know this, HGH is kind of a staple in the bodybuilding community. It's very common for professional bodybuilders to use HGH at very high doses. But I ran it at 4 IUs per day, and I injected that before bed each night for the full 90 days. And the reason I did that was because this timing actually kind of aligns with your natural growth hormone release during deep sleep. And because of that, for the first few weeks on HGH, you'll notice deeper, more restful sleep. Then by weeks 4, 5, that's when recovery really starts to improve. You're less sore and you have a lot more energy during training. Then finally, by week 6 to 8 of being consistent with it, that's when you start to really notice your body composition changing. Tighter skin, you have a leaner look. I mean, when I'm in the gym, I've got these crazy pumps, and I think a lot of it has to do with the HGH. Now, just keep in mind that at higher doses of growth hormone, some people may experience water retention or joint pain, carpal tunnel, tingling in the hands. But at 4 IUs, I didn't really have any of those issues. And one last thing to note about growth hormone. If you have a history of cancer, stay away from it. HGH is definitely not something you should take. Because it raises IGF-1 levels, it's going to accelerate cell growth, which includes cancer cells and tumors. So that's going to be a hard stop for anyone with that risk. Okay, so like I said, on this cut, I started at 246 pounds. And yesterday I weighed in on the scale at 219. So about 27 pounds gone in 90 days. Now, one thing I do want to note is that during this cut, I personally switched from like a strength-based training into more hypertrophy-focused work, which basically means I transitioned from low volume, very heavy style training to spending more of my time focused on volume and time under tension while I lift. And the reason I did that was because over the past couple years, I've been struggling with nagging injuries, ruptured a couple tendons, issues with my shoulder. And to be honest with you, I kind of came to the realization that, being as strong as possible wasn't as cool as being healthy. And so my values around weightlifting have definitely changed, which kind of means that my mindset around my physique and my health has also changed. Before I was focused on just being as big and strong as possible. Now I like feeling lighter, healthier, blood pressure under control, not eating 4,000 calories a day just to keep getting bigger. I can breathe, I sleep better. And I think it has a lot to do with not just the peptides, but also the change in habits and lifestyle that came with it. So I did lose a little bit of strength in this process, and it's very likely that I also lost a little bit of muscle, but I feel better than I ever have, and I definitely attribute it to the entire holistic process that we implemented here. Like I said in the beginning, the Retatrutide, it really crushed my appetite. I had to remind myself to eat, but once I leveled out, I was able to stay pretty steady with my nutrition and get plenty of protein in. And it really wasn't hard because the food noise from the Retatrutide really went away. The recovery improved from the TB-500 and the BPC-157. The MOTS-C helped to improve my performance in the gym. And I think the HGH did a good job of just kind of icing on the cake to give everything a more well-rounded look, appearance, results, and performance. So like I said, my diet pretty much stayed locked in from start to finish. I didn't lose much muscle. My abs came in, my skin tightened. I feel leaner, stronger. My recovery was on point. And so what I would say is this stack, it worked really well. But as a caveat, it only worked because I already had everything else pretty much dialed in. Now, if you're thinking about running something like this for yourself, these are a few things that you need to know before you dive in. The basics have to come first. Training at least 4 days a week, hitting your protein every day, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Those things should be completely non-negotiable for you. You can't use these peptides as a shortcut. Consistency is everything. So if your foundation isn't solid, you're going to lose muscle. You're going to feel run down. You're going to end up wasting your money because peptides can't fix bad habits. So make sure you get your blood work before you start and keep an eye on things while you're on. Because if you're not getting your blood work, you're just guessing. And that's not going to give you the data that you need to make intelligent decisions about your long-term health. So like I said, these compounds are best suited for people who are already training hard, eating right, tracking progress, and looking for that last bit of optimization to push things further. And that applies to both men and women. I see a lot of folks out there jumping to the peptides first because they want the result, but they don't realize that they're just throwing their money down the drain if they don't fix the foundational issues first. And sure, maybe you don't take this advice and you start to see results initially, but a few weeks in, you're going to start losing muscle along with that fat. Then a month later, your recovery is going to tank. You're going to hit a plateau. Your training is going to suffer. And by the end, sure, you're going to be lighter on the scale, but you're softer, your metabolism will be slower. And 6 months later, you're going to gain all that weight back weaker than you were when you started. Trying to use these peptides to skip the fundamentals is like trying to use steroids to skip training. It doesn't work, and it's just going to set you up for bigger problems down the road. So if you're serious about doing this, focus on your basics first. Be consistent and build the habits that make real results possible. And so, not to beat the dead horse on that, but if you're ready to take your own results to the next level, or you need help implementing all this stuff, I do have a free school community. We've got sourcing information for these peptides, a growing group for both men and women, plus everything that you need to make this kind of transformation possible and sustainable. We cover training, nutrition, supplementation, peptides, hormone optimization, everything all tied together so that you can get the help that you need. If you want to join, like I said, it's completely free. All you have to do is just tap the link in the description below, set up an account, and we'll get you access. So if you're watching this because you want to change your body, start there. Build the habits, do the work, then use the tools like this to fine-tune the process and take things even further. That's how you get results that last, and more importantly, that you actually feel proud of. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next video.